Good evening. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We start tonight in Lima, Peru. That's where thousands of people continue to march denouncing the abuse of Earth's resources and urging ministers haggling over a world climate deal to ensure a global switch to 100% clean energy by the year 2050. Students, environmentalists, workers, women's defenders, anti-poverty activists, and indigenous groups joined what's been termed the People's Climate March. Meanwhile, inside, UN Chief Ban Ki-moon says a draft is necessary to begin real negotiations. Peru's Ollanta Humala calls for urgent action to thwart global warming.
We have been talking over the last 2 decades. Now it is time to begin real, serious negotiations based on draft text. A non-paper is not an option. I urge all delegations to overcome all procedural matters and deliver a draft negotiating text.
Nearly 2.5 months have passed since students from the Ayotzinapa Teacher Training College disappeared in Guerrero, Mexico. Rights groups gathered for a memorial for Julio Cesar Mondrago, who was one of the first 3 students killed. As Clayton Kahn reports, the event was less of a protest and more of a space for reflection.
With grief and comfort, this church filled with supporters and families of the Ayotzinapa students who paid homage in memory to Julio Cesar Mondragon, one of the first 3 students killed on the night of September 26th. For father and spokesman Felipe de la Cruz, Julio Cesar's murder was no accident.
It seems that to be a student is a very serious crime, if they had to kill them like this.
Organizers from the Fray Victoria Human Rights Center said the event was orchestrated as a memorial and space of reflection, yet it was also a space of practical solidarity, a drop-off of supplies for the family of Julio Cesar and his months-old daughter that he left behind.
Here we are receiving supplies for the family of Julio Cesar, who is receiving this homage, and principally his daughter. We are receiving diapers and baby items, as well as other general items for 3 months old and onwards.
Like the entire case of the disappeared Ayotzinapa students, the murder of Julio Cesar has left many fundamental questions. His wife Marisa says the investigation has been downplayed and left only to authorities in the state of Guerrero.
They need to take the case to the Attorney General's office so that they can begin the inquiry. It shouldn't be just classified as a homicide, but rather a state crime and a crime against humanity.
As the holiday vacations approach for many, the families and supporters of the Ayotzinapa students affirm that there will be no rest for the authorities, declaring further actions and protests until they feel that justice has been won. Clayton Kahn, Telesur, Mexico City.
Thanks to Clayton. Bolivian President Evo Morales announced at a coca eradication ceremony that Bolivia eradicated some 11,000 hectares of coca plantations in 2014, contributing to advances in the country's fight against drug-related crime. A further 5,000 drug processing factories were also destroyed. Bolivian President Evo Morales says that the nationalization of the fight against drug-related crime is an important factor of this year's success.
After nationalizing the fight against drug trafficking, we are much better in this area, as we are in the eradication and reduction of coca plantations. Previously, North American soldiers did not respect the human rights of Bolivians, and much less the sovereignty and dignity of our people. With our military bases and the presence of the CIA and the Drug Enforcement Administration, Bolivia was in a bad way.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has railed against the U.S. Senate for passing a bill to impose sanctions on Venezuelan government officials. The measure targets Venezuelan officials after the 3-month-long street protests by the opposition to try and destabilize the government, which left 43 people dead. Maduro says the unrest was part of a broader U.S.-backed attempt to unseat him.
If the crazy path of sanctions are imposed, President Obama, I think you're going to come out looking very bad, because the one who touches the moral peace of Venezuela, Latin America, is playing with history, President Obama. President Obama needs to recover the equilibrium with Venezuela, because Commander Chavez's Bolivarian Revolution will not be frightened by sanctions.
In world news tonight, the fallout continues after a U.S. Senate report revealed the extent of the CIA's torture program. They include a catalog of nightmarish abuses, such as detainees being forced to stand on broken limbs for hours, kept in complete darkness, deprived of sleep for up to 180 hours, and medically unnecessary rectal feeding. At the time, CIA Chief John Brennan said he believed that coercive interrogations were very likely to produce false information.
I tend to believe that the use of coercive methods has a strong prospect for resulting in false information, because if somebody is being subjected to coercive techniques, they may say something to have those techniques stopped. And I think this agency has said that individuals who are subjected to those techniques here provided useful information as well as false information.
Weaknesses in the West African healthcare system have been exposed by the Ebola outbreak. Estimates indicate hundreds of millions of dollars are needed to rectify it for future problems. Even as Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia continue to battle the virus that has killed nearly 6,400 people, focus is turning to how to rebuild shattered health services. Guinea's health minister says the virus has spread so rapidly due to a lack of health infrastructure.
This was one of the causes of the spread of the epidemic. The weakness and lack of absence of human resources in these districts when the epidemic started. In some districts, there was practically one nurse or carer, and they didn't have the required training to handle cases related to the management of epidemics.
Although the world has helped Sierra Leone in acquiring the necessary resources to combat the Ebola epidemic, the country still needs resources to address the rest of the problems related to poverty and underdevelopment. Here's Oscar Apelde.
We took a branch from Maforki in Port Loco to a remote community that had suffered from Ebola. On the way to Rotongbay, Samarang, there are almost no vehicles on the road. That is the railway of the South African company funded by China that mines the gold of Port Loco, which is who built the path to Rotongbay. The town is made up of 10 families. One of the neighbors came sick one day and died after a week. After that, the rest became ill. 23 died in total.
After he died, the people of this town began to get sick and die. The total number of people that we lost was 23.
They called an ambulance, but it did not come. Those who could walk went to the hospital by foot and died there. Those who couldn't walk died in the town. We still have not confirmed if these were cases of Ebola. A few lived with natural medicines. The problem is that they continue to have problems. They do not have enough food. They give a half sack of rice to each family and ensure that the distributors keep the other half. They also do not have enough money to pay school taxes for many children who have been orphaned by father or mother. The government took some of them, but brought them back after a few weeks.
I need the government to help me so that my children can have an education and so they can help me later. In reality, we need the help of the government.
Because of the quarantine, they could not pick the rice crop what ended up rotting. Now, they have nothing to eat or plant. After Ebola, Rotongbay Samarang, like many other towns of Port Loco, have asked for development aid, help with school, a health center, and agricultural development aid, none of which they have received yet. From Port Loco, Oscar Apelde for Telesur.
Thanks to Oscar. To end tonight, 100 years after the famous World War I Christmas truce, a memorial has been unveiled. During the Christmas truce, British and German soldiers dropped their arms and forgot about war to play football in no man's land on Christmas. A simple stone sculpture of a stylized football player honors one of the most famous incidents of the war. It has become a symbol of peace amid the horrors of war. Rank and file soldiers overcoming the national rivalries that left millions dead. Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English for Telesur English. I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you in the morning.